Channel update video, kind of. It's actually a lot of things, and I'm somewhat excited for it, but I understand this is not the content a lot of people are in this channel for, so feel free to skip this one, but not before leaving a subscribe. It really helps the channel out. That said, I am actually really excited for this one because I have some plans, and I think this feels a lot more logically beneficial, if nothing else. So for a long time, I have wanted to create a Bionicle game. I've actually worked on some in the past, although because of various different issues, like my computer hard drive crashing way back in like 2009, I just stopped, right? Anyway, point being, I decided I wanted to try and do it again a couple of years ago. However, although I've made some like sprite sheets and things for it, I don't really have a lot of experience when it comes to game development as it stands, right? And so rather than try to make something new from the ground up without any sort of guidance at all, I figure why not try to make something that's already been done? So I have a set of rules, if you will, a set of goals to try and accomplish. And so my thought is that why not try to recreate a game like Bionicle Quest for the Toa? Not necessarily the entire game, although that would be fun too, but just recreating aspects of it so I can sort of get familiar with navigating in different game development engines like Godot, for example, which is what I plan on using right now. But, you know, that could easily change, sure. That said, I think that's a pretty good idea overall, because I think Quest for the Toa is a game that is actually really good and is slept on, but it's not perfect by any means. It does have a handful of sort of misses in general, right? And the game does show its age to some degree. I think for the time that it came out, it was a really aesthetically pleasing game on the Game Boy Advance back in 2001. The models on it were actually really incredible, probably because I imagine they were made in some kind of 3D modeling software before taking stills from their body, if you will, right? And then importing those stills as sprites. I'm probably oversimplifying this and not using the correct terminology, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at. That said, of course, it gives me something to sort of follow along with, sort of guidelines to follow along with to get familiar with these different aspects of development, and it gives me sort of an end goal, right? Because I get to see, oh, not am I trying to make a character move, but I'm trying to like sort of define the predefined limits of that movement, right? Because obviously with game development, you can do a lot of things, but by not following a specific path, it's very easy to sort of broaden your scope to such a degree that you can't really reasonably expect to do it yourself, or at least not within a small time frame. So anyway, that's the plan right now. Obviously, I'm more than happy to accept help from others, more than happy to listen to information from others who think, hey, here's something you could do. So that's something you could definitely chime in on over on the Discord server, especially, which is linked in the description. But also, it's worth mentioning too that I don't want to just like remake the game necessarily. I would like to even do it in a way where it looks more updated, you know, more modern than it does in the past. So that's not something I'm too worried about at this point in time. But at the very least, I can provide some more accurate models, for example, right? I can provide some more accurate versions of Rahi. And so why not lean into that? I think that would be a lot of fun. That way, it's not that I'm just making the game again a second time, but that way I'm making a game that looks like an updated version. If nothing else, if I end up completing the project, completing the game, it's the game again, but with, I guess, more modern graphics, if nothing else. That said, I'm not talking about like AAA graphics or anything. No, nothing crazy like that. But obviously, you know, the Game Boy Advance is very limited in what it can and cannot display, and I would just be moving up from that, right? So yeah, I don't know, I think it's an interesting idea, but I'm trying not to get too in love with the idea, let's just say, because I know that there are things that might have to change. That said, there are obviously other things I want to talk about in this video too. Notably, I know that like with the YouTube stuff here recently, YouTube is kind of an interesting beast, because I have learned just from creating content and also sort of riding the waves of YouTube that it's not like a fully consistent little vehicle here, which is completely understandable. But also that YouTube is sort of a place that's pretty heavily reliant on your content getting picked up at the right place at the right time. Like there's a lot of stuff that's out of your control as a smaller YouTube creator. I think that's something that if you're interested in making YouTube content yourself, I would highly encourage you to do so if it's something you think you will enjoy, because I didn't think I would enjoy it until I started doing it for real. And then it turns out, yeah, I do enjoy it. It has its frustrations, absolutely, but it's a lot of fun overall, and it does kill time. I will definitely say that. But that said, in general, when you are a smaller channel like mine is, there's no guarantee that the content you put out is going to like go viral or anything like that. And you shouldn't expect it to. There's also such a thing as like not desiring your content to go viral in some ways. I think that there's this allure with trying to create content for the first time on YouTube or trying to make a name for yourself on the platform where you sort of, I guess you expect to fill bigger shoes, right? And I think this is true for most people that feel like getting into YouTube, that there's this almost like daunting idea that you have to achieve, when in reality, I know like the content, for example, on my channel that does really well, that gets really good numbers, but I also know that that's not the content I enjoy making 100% of the time, right? And if I did make it 100% of the time, I would kill my interest in making YouTube videos pretty quick. So why would I continue to do that? I wouldn't, of course. So I try to sort of sprinkle in that type of content because I do enjoy making it, but I also try to sprinkle it in with other stuff that fascinate me, whether it be Bionicle related or not, right? And, as someone who has ADHD, as someone who will hyperfixate on something for a few weeks and then hyperfixate on something else, like right now I'm talking about Metrodui and stuff like that, I understand that can be hard for an audience to follow sometimes, right? Because for me, it makes sense. For me, it logically follows because I'm spending 100% of my time up here carrying over those thoughts and writing the thoughts down, which could take several hours, right? Whereas you guys are only seeing the bit that I record. Anyway, that said, like I said, I also understand that like YouTube, as I mentioned, is kind of like a roller coaster ride where sometimes your stuff just gets pushed out there and you don't really know why. I couldn't tell you why. I often talk about starting this process back in November, even though I've been on YouTube for a handful of years now. November is when it really started picking up for me and has continued to do so. Nearly every day on YouTube since then has been growth on the channel, which I very much appreciate. But in that, I also understand that the video that I put out when I put it out was the exact type of video that should do well, if any were going to do well, right? Like, I understand that there's no guarantees when it comes to YouTube videos, but I was giving YouTube what it wanted. And the only really determining factor for if the video was going to do well was time, honestly, right? If I put it out at the right time, or if, 3-4 months down the road, it would get picked up, if anything. But I knew that content-wise, it was good quality content. Now, I'm not talking about like, quality in terms of video, but what YouTube generally desires, right? And it did work out. I woke up the next day to like 1,500 views on that video. And up until that point, that was the fastest I'd ever had a video take off. Obviously, since then, we've done better, but I didn't expect that kind of growth on a video like that, because up until that point, even though I had been doing this for years, had 700 subscribers, I would maybe average 100, 200 views on a video, like at most. Some videos got more, sure, but not that much more, and not to that degree, and not that quickly. So once I started seeing that, that's when I decided, okay, now's the time to sort of jump on this ride, if you will, while it's gathering steam, while it's just trekking down the tracks, if you will. And it ended up working out really well for me. So I'm very thankful for that. But I understand that it was near entirely luck. The content that I put out was my content. The content I put out was something that I designed, so I was very passionate about it. And that means that, yeah, there was stuff that went into it that was mine specifically, but there was no guarantee that that content was going to do well, because that's out of my control. Once I hit publish, there are only a handful of things that I can control. That's the thumbnail, the title, and maybe shifting some information around in the description, and that's practically it. So it's always fun to learn about that kind of stuff, because I think that there's a lot of people that sort of get lost in their own. I'm going to show a build here in a minute. I did bring something over, but I think that there are a lot of people that have the idea that starting a YouTube channel is easy. And I will say that it is easy, but not easy in the sense of knowing something is going to work. Skill set wise, I don't think you have to be as professional as let's say YouTube gurus will make it out to believe, right? Because in general, there's no way of knowing what type of content is going to resonate with an audience and what audience it will resonate with, which is, it makes total sense in your own mind. But I think that we overthink the idea of YouTube and platforms like this as this sort of formulaic algorithmic beast. And it is on its side, but on your side, it is your tool. And so it's just about learning how to use the tool in the way that best accentuates the skill that you're trying to hone, right? And the ability that you're trying to showcase. And I think that that's true for me. I think that's true for any YouTuber out there. But with that, you know, I've consumed content on like YouTube guru stuff in the past, mostly because I wanted to actually make a video kind of debunking some guru stuff, because I do think that they spread a lot of misinformation, not necessarily dangerous information, but misinformation that is designed to kind of keep your hopes up, but also keep you coming back. And it makes sense from a business perspective, right? They want you to keep consuming their content because that's how they make their money, right? Through views. But I'm surprised too, because many of these guru type channels have really high subscriber counts. And then you look at the video views, and there are several videos that don't even get as many views as mine. And I'm like, I'm a tiny little channel here. And my channel does well for its size. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to undersell it. But I would expect a channel with 1 million subscribers or 700,000 subscribers or whatever the case may be to get more views on a channel like that, especially when they use sort of clickbaity thumbnails. And it's kind of crazy that I don't see it. But I think it's because, you know, people do pick up on that pretty quick, that it is kind of clickbait, that it is kind of trying to funnel you into a very specific type of pitch and keep you in. And that's not to say that they don't give you useful information, because they do, but it's either painfully obvious information or it's contradictory information. What I mean by that is, like, you'll consume one video from this channel, it'll give you a piece of information, then you'll consume another video from the same channel, which will completely go against the previous video that you watched. And it's because they're not banking on you having watched multiple videos, even though they are gearing the channel that way. So it's kind of weird. But they're banking on you rather either tuning out some of this information and so not catching the contradiction, or just generally being a newcomer, right? Because this type of content is evergreen, YouTube gurudom, I guess, but it is not the kind of content that facilitates a loyal fan base, because that's inherent to the whole proposition, right? At some point, some percentage of that audience is going to start a YouTube channel, and some percentage of it is going to give up on the idea of a YouTube channel because they don't see the what they were going for, right? They don't see a result that they expect from the effort they put in. And that's the funniest thing about it too, is because, you know, my channel, I have very limited resources when it comes to funding for stuff like this, right? It's why I can't get like a better phone, a better camera, and I make do. But there are a lot of these sort of YouTube gurus who will talk about why your channel needs to have like really professional lighting, really professional cinematography, really professional camera, really professional audio setup, and so on and so forth. And that stuff can help, don't get me wrong, but I've also seen YouTube channels out there that have been around for years whose content looks way more curated than mine does. It looks really, really professional, and they might have like 700 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers. I'm like, I don't understand how they have so few, and the content that they're giving is good content, but it's just because not everybody has gathered that audience yet. You know, their videos might get 20, 30 views or something, and so they're just not reaching a broad enough audience, in my opinion, for people to have found them, to have discovered them, to have clicked on and subscribed to their content. And so these channels end up remaining small, in part because of the YouTube algorithm just never really having come around to them yet. I hope for their sake it will, but it just goes to show that, like, the professionalism isn't all. And also, you will have seen within the last year and a half or so, a lot of channels actually sort of pulling back on that professionalism in lieu of a sort of faux authenticity. I've noticed this with a lot of big channels where they go from standing in front of like a green screen and talking, for example, to suddenly sort of sitting down in a comfy chair in a living room or some kind of, you know, staged setting to feel a little more authentic. And I think that, you know, more power to them. These are people after all, so I would hope that some of their actual authenticity is coming through. But also it's because YouTube right now is sort of geared towards that authentic audience. People are getting tired of the sort of hyper edited, hyper focused content, the just there's a specific word I'm trying to think of. But yeah, my brain's not grabbing it. Point being, it's just overstimulating content, right? And so yeah, people get very tired of that because it feels inauthentic and it feels like it's a dime a dozen type of content rather than someone who's actually talking about what they're passionate about talking about. So in part, I think that my content is coming around at the right time on YouTube, being that I'm creating the content I've really always been creating, but I've honed my skill slightly and I've improved the quality of the videos slightly to the degree that I can. I've had people ask me why I can't like sit further away from the camera. Part of that is because my microphone only reaches so far, but another part is because I live in a trailer with a floor that is like really saggy in certain spots, and the chair I'm sitting in is literally just a kitchen chair. It does not have wheels or anything like that on it. And in certain positions in the room, it will literally like collapse to the floor. It's awful. It's not great, but it's what I have. It's all I can do for now. In the future, hopefully that changes. I'd like to have a chair with wheels. I don't care about those stupid like racing gaming chairs. They're not comfy for me. I just need an office chair, nothing fancy. I used to have some back when I didn't own them, but when I was in school in engineering classes, and they were the most bare bones rolling chairs in the like you could have, and I loved them. They were all I needed. I don't really care for armrests on chairs because they end up getting in my way, and I'm Italian in part, so I talk with my hands anyway. In part. Anyway, with that said, though, before I end the video, just long story short, I know this one went off the rails a bit, but that's fine. Hopefully, some of the information you gain from this video is good information, but I wanted to showcase this very quickly because, as you can see in the background here, I've built a couple of the Metru Titans, including Nadiki, which I think this is the first time that I've built Nadiki in at least, if not over, 15 years. It's absolutely crazy to think about. That said, the other thing I wanted to show you was the third Titan here, which is Nevok, but I rebuilt the head because I don't like the head on the original one. It's a fairly straightforward build. I don't know if, yeah, you might be able to understand how that works. They're pretty straightforward enough. And, you know, it's just got the little Borak eyes on the front or on the side here that you can push to get the beak to crunch or whatever, and just a rubber band up there. Nothing fancy going on. But yeah, it's very, very simple little head build, just designed slightly differently because why the original Nevok has a beak that looks like weird claw tendril bits when this piece existed when Nevok came out. Like, it's already a bird beak. Like, give it to him. Anyway, it is not silly. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for the video. If you did enjoy this one, then again, I would appreciate a subscribe. I guess I'll show you this too, just because it's sitting next to me. I'll show you two more things before I end the video. First off, this is Nokama wearing the shoe version of the Great Rao, not the set version, which is neat. It's a little bit bigger than the original, so it makes her head look a little bit larger, which I find kind of funny. But you can actually, I don't know if you can see it. You can actually see like the shape of her Metro head through the eyes, which is something I really could not do with the original, so that was kind of fun. The other thing I wanted to showcase, just because I saw this yesterday when I was digging through some parts, doing some experimentation, is I found one of these 2003 hammers, but in pearl light gray, which is funny because it shouldn't exist in this color. As far as I'm aware from my research, it did not come in any of the accessory packs, although some of the Matoran pieces did, but the hammer did not specifically, and so I wasn't sure it was going to show up on camera. But here is a comparison between classic silver and pearl light gray on the Matau swords, which these pieces do exist in both shades. So yeah, this piece was only made in 2003, so before we ever had the pearl light gray polypropylene. But yeah, so it's probably most likely that this is not technically pearl light gray, but rather it's just a variation in the amount of material that's in it, whether it's the amount of powder that's in it to give it the silver color, the amount of pigment, whatever the case may be. Probably just less of it here, right? And so therefore it's lighter in shade than it should be. But I found that fun. So, all right, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, as I mentioned, like and subscribe because it does help the channel out. And of course, if you learned anything about YouTube at all, I guess you can subscribe that way too. If you do want to help in the development of this Bionicle game, even if it's just sort of like giving information, whether it's working with like Godot, whether it is information specifically about the Bionicle quest for the Toa game. I do know a decent amount about it, but I don't know everything, and there's a lot of technical stuff that I'm not aware of as of yet, so that'll be fun to learn. And it's definitely a long-term project, do not get me wrong. This is not something that's going to come out like next week. That said, too, you can check out the Discord down in the description below to get a hold of me for whatever reason. And of course, as always, Instagram and Patreon are both down there as well. Patreon is definitely helpful, and I do appreciate everybody who has put forward anything on the Patreon already. All right, that's it for this one, guys. Take care.